Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello and welcome back to Game Over Network's coverage of the Men's Olympic Hockey Tournament. Jordan Hachey from Game Over Montreal here with Conrad Krausert of Game Over Calgary. So excited to be here. Canada moves on to the finals. Close game against Finland, second close game in a row, but this time Canada does not need overtime. Conrad, how you feeling?
I'm feeling that Cole Harbour showed us that there is two superstars from the small town. And boy, oh boy, closer than it should have been. But as they always say, 2-0 is the worst lead in hockey.
Yeah, definitely closer than you would have liked. You go down early. That's back-to-back comeback wins for Canada, by the way.
And the first and only team to do that in Olympic history, to have back-to-back comeback games to make the gold medal game. So, more history made for this Olympic squad.
Heck yeah. But yeah, it really didn't go Canada's way the first 40 minutes of this game. What did you think was going wrong early on for Canada?
It started out with the lines being wrong to start again. Um, we've beat on that drum every time we've been together, but yeah, you saw Tom Wilson get demoted as soon as the Canadiens were down, and John Cooper, I understand, get it going with your gut and continuing to play the lines that you got practice with. But man, just seems if you're gonna do it for 5 minutes, then go down a goal, maybe you need to switch things up. But yeah, I honestly just felt there was a little bit of trepidation from the Canadian roster. Um, and you said it in the last episode, like it kind of feels like Binnington gives up a couple, not necessarily soft goals, but goals you'd like to have if you're going to be playing for a gold medal. But the team rallies around him, and you know what? I don't want to beat on this team too badly, but you kind of got lucky in this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this game and I'm pretty concerned about the final. I was a little concerned after the Czechia game, but I thought, okay, well now that's their get right game. Like it's gonna help them lock in for the rest of this tournament. But this game was kind of more the same, and it might have been even a bit worse because they got bailed out by 4 power plays. They're 2 for 4 on the PP. The only way that they get back in this game is because they get power plays off a lucky high stick and call that McKinnon draws. It was a high stick, but I mean that's still pretty lucky that you're gonna get a penalty drawn. And I thought at least for the first 40 minutes of this game, it felt like Canada just didn't have very much cohesion in the offensive zone. They were really going in a lot of solo rushes, like 1-on-3, 1-on-4. You make a nice move, work around the perimeter, and then take a weak shot when no one's driving to the net. I felt like that happened like at least like 10 times in the second period.
Yeah, and they're always talking about how Macklin Celebrini was shooting from anywhere, and it brought me back to a dark era of Calgary Flames hockey where you had Daryl Sutter coaching the absolute superstars that were Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, and just fire shots from anywhere. Dark days that I don't love remembering. But yeah, like for a team of what's supposed to be some of the best hockey players in the world, it was kind of playing out of style, in my opinion. And like as we can say, the Canadiens played not that great in the first 40. Like you have to consider that Eric Howlett goal kind of a fluke off of a blocked shot from the point. Good move from Howlett. Of course, you'd like to see Binnington stop that, being a shorthanded opportunity. But that's 1v1, and hey, this is still a Finnish team that, as they said on the broadcast numerous times, has the most medals in the NHL Olympic era out of any team.
Yeah.
So, a very successful program, a team that plays very close knit. And hey, if they had any other goaltender, this game probably isn't as close as it was. But hey, one of the best goalies of all of the modern era, and I think he'd have more people singing his praises if he had about another 3 inches in height. And you say Saros, like, say what you will, like, this is a Finnish team that is very, very good and deserve to be here and push the Canadiens to their limit.
Yeah, they definitely had a strong game, and it makes you think, what if they had Barkov in the lineup a little bit? Because that could have been a different hockey game if that guy was sitting there at their first line center. Saros definitely played pretty well. I honestly thought he maybe could have had McKinnon's goal. It squeaked past him. It felt like he was in position based on the replay, and it still somehow got past him. I think he's gonna kick himself for that. But the whole game, he was really strong, especially in terms of his rebound control. Nothing was popping out of him, and that was really good to just to be reminded of how good of a player he is. I don't know if he's one of the best goalies in the modern era, but he definitely is a very strong goaltender.
So I'll say this is a team that has a short goaltender that always gets compared to Yusei Saros. Um, he gets a lot of flack just because he isn't that prototypical skyscraper that we see in the modern NHL. It's really downplays how a lot of critics are, or people who talk about the position talk about Yusei Saros. I say, oh, he's a good goaltender, considering he's short, not taking into the fact that his size allows him to be more athletic. And hey, uh, if that shot isn't a million miles an hour from Nathan MacKinnon, it probably doesn't bend the toe of that pad back. But, you know, game of inches that this game was, like, Saros probably does want that one back. But, like, let's say Jonas Corposalo, or let's go back to the last time the Finns won a gold medal with with NHL goaltending. Mika Kiprasov back in between the pads, or in between the posts. I don't think there's a lot of goalies that are stopping that shot if they're just getting a toe to it. I don't think it matters what goalie that is. So, but like, we've given the Finns their flowers, and of course, this is after a little bit of drama with the Finnish team. Obviously, there's rumor coming out from Italy that the players weren't happy with their non-NHL coach prior to this game. Them and the Swedes. They played really well. They played a system that is really tough to break down. Not quite like going back to the days of the trap, but definitely trying to play solid 2-1 hockey games, and unfortunately the Canadian firepower was a little bit too much today for them.
Yeah, if you're playing that style, you just can't take 4 penalties against Canada. That's what it is. And I did think they were really effective in terms of the suppression. The reason Canada was getting a lot of 1-on-3 shots from the outside is because they were suppressing the neutral zone very effectively, zone entries as well. Excuse me. And I haven't talked about what I thought, like some mistakes that Canada made in this one. So I'm going to go to that quickly before we give Canada our praises. But pretty much the biggest mistakes in this game, the biggest things that went wrong, are easily preventable things from Canada that somehow the management, it feels like they're just getting it wrong. Sam Bennett's on the ice, takes the dumbest penalty you're ever going to see. He gets a nice shot on goal. He's running at a defender, makes zero attempt to avoid the goalie or the defender, shoves the defender right into the goalie, and then bang, it's a 1-0 game. And yes, he does make up for it later by making a nice play to create the goal when that fourth line was on. But I just think that kind of mistake is not something you can afford in a gold medal game. And then in the game against Czechia, we see Tom Wilson had a really poor game and had a dumb high sticking penalty. So both these players playing for Canada, when they're good back-to-back games, these guys taking really dumb penalties, and it just really annoys me.
So I'm going to stand up for Sam Bennett a little bit more than I'll stand up for Tom Wilson, because I actually thought he was really good in the face-off dot for the Canadian team. And that was something we didn't see when he was a Calgary Flame. It's something he's definitely developed ways in Florida. But it's those guys that play on the edge that need to understand that the international rule book is much different than the one in the NHL they're used to. They need to understand and play to the international rulebook, not the one that they play with. And speaking of walking the line, there was even the potential that Brad Marchand had gone over that proverbial line because there was some talk that he stepped into the blue paint and then got pushed onto Yusei Saros, which according to international rules would have been goaltender interference even though he was shoved. So I think it really boils down to players needing to be smarter and knowing that it is the international rules set, not the NHL one they came for or came from and play with usually. But I think a lot of this roster kind of picked them up. And as I said, maybe I need to rescind a little bit of my positives because Sam Bennett only was a 42% in the face-off dot. But hey, got the assist. He was a +1. And he also won the face-off to end it. So I guess we can't be too mad at Sam here, Jordan.
Yeah, you know what he did? He did make up for the mistake, or for the. I wouldn't even call that a mistake. I would just call that bad. Made up for the bad. So at best, it's a neutral play. Like I still don't see how it's worthy of a big praise, but at least he did make up for it. And that's something you want to see from your guys for Team Canada if they are going down the stretch. If you make a mistake, you come back and bounce back from it as quick as you can. But let's talk about the good that we saw from Canada, and I wanted to start. Obviously, this is on Game Over Montreal. I'm Game Over Montreal. You see all the Montreal, but I thought Nick Suzuki really fit with Mark Stone and Mitch Marner. It fit like a glove. We talked about it in the last video, but it really went over well with that line today.
And yeah, Nick Suzuki was fine. Of course, that line doesn't really show up on the score sheet, but when 50% of his draws, they all played around that 14-minute mark. Of course, they're turning that line into a line that has a defined role. They are the shutdown line. They're going to go out when it is the toughest competition and going to try and shut them down. And that means a lot of defensive zone starts. That means a lot of time where you're expected to go win a faceoff, grind the puck out, and then jump over the boards so that the Mac 3 can jump over the line or jump over the boards. And they did that role to pretty much perfection today, as being even when that is your job is exactly what's asked of you. Like, obviously, with me being a Flames player or Flames commentator, we think of Michael Backlund as filling that role really well. And it's not something that's necessarily asked of Nick Suzuki with the Canadiens from the games that I've seen, but it is a role that suits him in the international game, where I don't think I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers for our Montreal fans by saying Nick Suzuki is not a superstar to the levels of McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, but is a very solid player. So when you are that star but not a superstar coming into these big international competitions, sometimes you have to be accepting of a different role, and I think Suzuki played it very well.
Yeah. In Montreal, Suzuki is kind of asked to do everything. If he needs to be shut down, they'll ask him to do it, and he does it, but it's not a consistent role for him, or not a role that he's asked to play all the time. But late in a game, you need someone to shut down. It's Suzuki is the one that Montreal does want on the ice. And yeah, it's a good role for him. And that also begs the question, Sidney Crosby was skating today. Where does he come back for the final? And if he does, where do you think he fits in the lineup, Conrad?
I think he centers that second line. I think you have to keep the Mac 3 together. Like, as we said, if in your silver medal game, you're deciding that Tom Wilson can only stay on that top line for 3 shifts, maybe 4, you can't keep that together.
Zero
so
shifts.
You need another
Zero
center.
shifts. Zero shifts. I'm done. If
So
he plays one
yeah,
shift. Sorry, didn't
so
want to
you need
interrupt.
No, it's okay. But you need that center on the line too. And I think you got to keep Jarvis on that second line. So I think that's where he slots in, is between Seth Jarvis and Bo Horvat. I guess technically Horvat is the center, but then you have that 2 center sort of mentality on that line. And then you play the crash bang line, as I like to call them, in Sam Bennett, Brendan Hagel, and then probably if you're not going to scratch him, it's going to be Tom Wilson in that line. Does that mean you're scratching a guy like Sam Reinhart, who had a goal and is playing on power play 1? That's a little harder to get my head wrapped around. Maybe it goes back to scratching Brad Marchand, as bad as you feel scratching one of the vets in potentially one of the biggest games of his potential career. Maybe that's the way it has to go.
Yeah, Marchand or Wilson seems pretty likely in my opinion. I think scratching Wilson is definitely the best move, but they're not going to because he needs to match up against the Kachucks. Like, dude, please, I'm so tired of this. I don't like talking about this every video, but you see it in these games. It's just he's laying decent hits, but it's like what else is he doing? Like anyway, I'm going to rein myself in
As
here.
as was said to Tom Wilson, what are you going to do? Jump another guy who doesn't know how to fight? Like, I don't know if you heard that when the mics picked it up in the previous game. So we'll have to see what Coop says, because John Cooper's word matters more than either of ours.
Yeah, and so yeah, Crosby, hopefully he's back. That would be really nice. It adds just so much depth to the middle six for this team, and it would be huge in keeping our offensive advantage over the U.S. But as we move over to the defense, Josh
Well,
Morrissey.
you're assuming it's U.S. It could still be the Czechs.
Oh, the Slovaks,
Or
yeah.
rather,
You're
Slovaks.
right.
I'm just going back about a decade when they were still a country together. But yes.
And Conrad, today, on the defensive side of the puck, I thought the defenders for Canada today stepped up more so than they did in the Czechia game, especially on the offensive side. Shea Theodore, obviously, with a big slap shot one-timer to get us tied up. And then I even thought Travis Sanheim did a really good job activating in the offensive zone. And it was good to see that the Canadian defenders knew that they had to get more involved, and they did that in this one.
Yeah, it was really good. Obviously, Shea Theodore playing a little bit more in the second 2 periods than he did in the first, only with 2 minutes and 20 seconds as that seventh defenseman. Played 5 minutes total in period number 2. Really took that place of Drew Doughty on that third pair. I thought he played probably exactly the game Canada needed him to. Him being that secondary offensive option on the right-hand side. And hey, I think they even started double shifting Cale Makar, Calgary's own. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because, as we've talked about with Sidney Crosby, there's also talk that Josh Morrissey may be able to return to the lineup for the final game. So who knows? But yeah, filled in the holes left by probably the player you could least afford to lose for this Canadian roster going in, being that second pairing right-handed defenseman. But yeah, I was very happy with the game the back end played today.
Yeah, definitely a solid performance, and they'll need more of that into the finals. If Josh Morrissey is back, that's huge for Canada. I think his ability to move the puck just up the ice in the defensive zone is something they've really missed because Parayko doesn't do it that effectively. Doughty's just okay at it, not the best, not the worst. And then Sanheim also isn't the best at getting those outlet passes going for breakouts. So that's 3 defenders that you're missing that really need to step that up. So if you get Morrissey in, that really helps, as long as he's healthy. But that's a huge thing for Canada. If they can get these 2 guys that they're missing back in the lineup, that'll be huge for them in the gold medal game.
But let it be said, I still think that Colton Parayko at 100% is better than Josh Morrissey at 80. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people that would argue with me on that. but I'd rather take the fully healthy player into a game, especially assuming it's the US that we're facing, a big physical team. I'd rather have fully healthy players,
Yeah,
point blank, period.
I think that's totally fair. You got to make sure he's good to go. Like if he's not fully good to
Him
go,
and Sid.
yeah. Yeah, both of them. I would certainly agree with that. Just the level of this game, you can't afford to have that. And then what if they get hurt again because they're playing hurt in the finals? What's that going to look like just optically for the NHL? They don't let these players go for 12 years and then you come back and Sidney Crosby gets hurt and gets hurt twice and then that would be really really bad.
Well, hey, Los Angeles is already up in arms saying that we shouldn't be going to the next Olympics because
Yeah.
of their injuries. So,
With yeah.
and hey, Teemu Selanne might say that the Ducks aren't going to go if the phantom high sticking calls are going to continue. Okay, Timo.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. You're just telling me about it. Apparently, Teemu Selanne was complaining about the high sticking call at the end of the game. When it was it clips McKinnon right here.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a bunch of funny images as well from around social media of people putting their Sidney Crosby cards either in rice or on ice, trying to fix him so that he is available for the Golden Game. Which there was a talk on Calgary Sports Radio on if you should dress Sidney Crosby regardless for the final, just to have him on the bench to be that calming influence. Maybe that's what you have to do. Maybe you figure Sam Bennett isn't bringing enough and you just want to have Sidney Crosby to go play 3 minutes and just be on the bench. So we'll have to see.
If it takes Tom Wilson out, I'm actually not even gonna complain. That's enough of that's enough crapping on Tom Wilson. Hopefully, yeah, he's probably playing. Hopefully, he has a good game against the U.S. I think he has more potential against the U.S. to do some good stuff to get in the Kachuk's heads, which is hopefully good if they do play the U.S. But heading forward, Canada gold medal game. They guaranteed themselves a medal in this one. Not always easy to do. Clearly not, because both these games were down to the wire. But a huge win for Canada. And Conrad, closing thoughts.
I was at the Vancouver Olympics I was there in the building hearing the Iggy shout. Hopefully, 14 years later, Sidney Crosby is on the ice and gets to lift another Olympic gold around his neck.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We are Game Over Network, Game Over Montreal. Conrad is Game Over Calgary. Please, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to our channels. It really does help. Every like, every subscribe helps so much. Thank you guys, and we'll see you after the gold medal.